Welcome to Rustler's Reminiscence, stories of hope, faith, and frontier courage. Let the journey unfold. I've lived on this land for 27 years, long enough to know the scent of fresh blood and river mud, the silence of missing bird song, and the unnatural chill that comes when something evil stirs. The first calf went missing on a Sunday. By the fourth one, I knew it wasn't just coyotes. The riverbank was torn up, but not wild-like. No scattered fur, no blood spray, no broken branches. Just one clean set of paw prints in the mud, round, wide, deep. A big cat, maybe, but the spacing was wrong. Too measured. Too perfect. Each step was exactly 27 inches apart, as if the thing moved with a ruler tied to its legs. That chilled me worse than any howl in the dark. My neighbor, old Jed, came by that night, brought his shotgun and his fear with him. He leaned against my porch rail and said, "Stay out of Dead Horse Canyon, Elijah. You start finding tracks that neat, you ain't tracking no beast. You're being lured." I laughed him off, but that stuck in my chest like a nail. Lured, not hunted, not stalked. Lured. Next few nights, I kept my lamp burning late. Twice. I heard its soft, padded steps along the gravel near my barn. I stepped out with my rifle and never saw a thing. No glowing eyes, no rustle in the brush. But the animals inside were spooked. One horse kicked its stall so hard it cracked a rib. Then came the night. I found something different. Same prints, same spacing, but this time right beside, a human boot print. Small heel, narrow sole. Someone was walking with it. I didn't sleep that night. Just stared out across the dark hills, one hand on my rifle, one thought swirling through my mind like a storm cloud. Who the hell walks side by side with a mountain lion? Next morning I packed up. Saddlebag, jerky, water, .30 to 30. Tracked the prints east along the water's edge. They led right to the mouth of Dead Horse Canyon. That old scar in the earth, they say, swallowed 3 prospectors whole in 1872. Stood at the entrance for a long time. No birds, no wind. Just the crunch of gravel under my boots and the uneasy breath in my chest. Then I heard it. A soft growl. Low, like a warning. I turned and saw nothing, but I knew it was in there, watching me. Waiting, I stepped inside anyway. The walls of Dead Horse Canyon rise like jagged teeth, steep and sunless, swallowing the morning light by the time you're 50 yards in. The deeper I rode, the more unnatural it felt, like walking into a throat that didn't want to spit you. Back out. The tracks stayed clear, always 2 sets. The cat's massive, deliberate, and the boots, narrow and light. At first I figured maybe I was dealing with some trapper who'd raised a wild cat, or maybe a drifter with a leash and no sense. But then the prints began to change. Not in shape, but in behavior. They weren't moving forward anymore. They were circling, darting in and out of the brush like they were laying something out. I dismounted and crouched, running a finger along one of the indentations. Fresh, less than an hour old. The cat was close. I tied off my horse and continued. On foot, rifle low, heart high. Rounding a bend, I caught my first sign of something more than animal or human. Rope stretched low across a narrow path. A tripwire, disguised with twigs and canyon dust. I stepped over it, suddenly aware that I was the prey now. Then I heard a voice. Clear, steady, feminine. Lay down. I froze. Not because the voice spoke to me, but because it wasn't Dot, it was speaking to something else. A shape moved in the shadows up ahead. Low to the ground, muscles fluid as water. The panther, sleek and dark as midnight oil, crouched beside a figure. cloaked in canvas and leather. The woman stood still as a stone, one hand raised like a conductor in mid-note. The panther lowered itself to the earth with eerie obedience, its eyes locked on her face. She leaned down, whispered something I couldn't hear, and fed it a strip of meat from a pouch on her belt. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a hunting. Paired that, this was a partnership. I backed up slowly, trying not to make a sound, but my boot kicked a pebble. The sound was deafening in the canyon stillness. The woman didn't flinch. She just turned her head and said, "You might as well show yourself. Stranger, you've been breathing too loud for 10 minutes. My stomach dropped. I raised my hands and stepped forward slowly, rifle still slung on my back. "I ain't here to fight," I said. "Just want to know why my cattle keep disappearing and leaving prints cleaner than a stage floor." She didn't answer, right? Away. Just stared, eyes like chips of stone, hand never leaving the panther's shoulder. Then she smiled cold and sharp. "Because they ain't yours. And neither is this canyon." She stood her ground like she'd been rooted there since time began, tall, lean, hair braided tight against the wind, skin tanned deep from sun and grit. Her eyes didn't move from mine, but I could tell she was watching everything, my posture, my breathing, the twitch in my fingers. And that cat of hers? It didn't blink once. "You got a name?" I asked, careful to keep my voice steady. She didn't answer right away, just reached down and scratched the panther behind the ears like it was a barn cat. Finally she said Luna Hayes. I'd heard that name before, or at least the Hayes part. There'd been a family with that name out near Dry Fork, before the fires, before the land got sold out from under them. Hard luck types, survivors, but the rest was mostly whispers. And the cat? I asked. "She's Luna, too." I raised an eyebrow. "Named her after myself," she said. "Figured if I was going to be alone out here, I might as well not be." Her words were steady, but something trembled just beneath them, like a wound dressed in bark. "You been the one talking my cattle?" She lifted her chin. "They wandered too far down the river, into the canyon. I ain't come for them. They came to me. That don't make 'em yours. They weren't yours, either. Not by right." I felt the heat rise in my chest. I bought that land fair, built that barn, dug those posts by hand. She stepped forward. "And whose bones are buried underneath him? You know who lived there before you? Or do you just call it empty when brown folk disappear?" The canyon felt colder then. Not from wind, but from something older. Something angry. I didn't have an answer. She sighed and sat on a flat rock, still petting. "The panther. My father used to own this canyon. Not on paper, but in blood and sweat and stories. Then came the surveys. Then came Morrison." I stiffened. Jacob Morrison. The name curled in my gut like rot. He was the railroad's man, the one who'd bought up half the valley and threatened to burn the other half down if folks didn't. "So, he took our land," she said. "Said we didn't have title. My parents tried to fight it, disappeared within a year. Sheriff called it an accident." My throat tightened. "That cat," she said softly, "is all I got left. Raised her from a cub after her mother got trapped in one of Morrison's poison pits. She hunts because I can't. She guards because no one else will." We sat in silence a while. Just a man with a rifle and a woman with a panther staring. Across a canyon full of ghosts. "You ain't leavin'?" I finally said. "Dot," she shook her head. "I should turn you in." "You won't." And I didn't know why, but she was right. I unslung my rifle, held it low. "I'm Elijah Cross." She didn't smile, but she nodded. "Then we're both trespassers, Elijah, on someone else's stolen land." It was past noon when I heard the hooves echoing off the canyon walls. Too many for it to be a patrol, and too fast for a friendly visit. I looked at Luna, and she was already moving, quick and silent, her panther following close behind. She didn't run, she disappeared. That girl and that beast blended into the canyon like smoke into sky. I stood alone when the posse rode in. Sheriff Blackwood led the pack, his star pinned to his coat like a threat. Behind him were 2 deputies and a third man in a gray duster with ink-stained fingers and a hard-mouthed someone from Morrison's office. No doubt. Government on a leash. Elijah Cross, Blackwood called, drawing up his reins. You got some explaining to do. I gave a half shrug, one hand on my belt buckle. About what? You've been seen near Dead Horse all week. Livestock's gone missing. Now folks are saying there's a wild animal trained to kill. That last line wasn't his. It came from the ink-fingered man. He had a folder in his hand, thick with papers he hadn't read but planned to enforce. She ain't wild, I said, louder than I meant to. And she ain't killin' for sport. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. There's a girl, I added. Luna Hayes. You remember the Hayeses, Sheriff? Blackwood's mouth twitched just a bit. I remember the fire. She's been livin' out here, trying to survive. The man in the duster cut in. Illegally. That land's under. Claimed by Morrison, I snapped. After her family was run out. That's the law. I stepped forward. No, sir. That's a contract signed in blood and smoke. They dismounted. I didn't move. I saw the flicker in Blackwood's eyes, the guilt, maybe. Or shame. She's got no right, the agent repeated. The animal is a threat. If you see her again, you'll detain her. Understood? No, I said plainly. I won't. That stopped everything, even the wind. The deputies shifted, hands on holsters. Blackwood didn't blink. You're willing to go against the law? The agent asked. I reckon I am, if the law's working for the wrong man. He stepped toward me, folder in hand, like a badge of God. You interfering with a legal apprehension, Mr. Cross? No, sir. I'm tellin' you there's nothin' to apprehend. Just a woman who ain't done nothin' but try to live. Blackwood finally spoke. That woman's got a panther trained like a soldier, Elijah. You sure she ain't dangerous? I looked him in the eye. She's dangerous, but only to the ones trying to bury her. The canyon went still again. Blackwood stared for a long moment. Then, quietly, he said, I'll give you 2 days. After that, I can't hold him back. They rode off, the ink-fingered man cursing under his breath. I turned to where Luna had vanished. She stepped out of the rocks like a ghost. You heard all that? I asked Dot. She nodded. Her eyes burned like fire on the rim of a storm. I ain't running, she said. Good, I replied. Then we'd best start digging in. 2 days later, the storm came not of wind or rain, but of dust, sweat, and loaded guns. Jacob Morrison arrived at Dead Horse Canyon like a banker come to foreclose on hell itself. He rode in the center of 5 men, each one armed like cavalry. Their horses were sleek, their coats new, their boots unscratched. Men who'd never dug a fence post in their lives. Men who thought land was something to own, not earn. I watched them from a ridge beside Luna. She lay flat, spyglass in one hand, the other resting gently on the panther's flank. Her breath was steady. Mine wasn't. You sure you want to do this? I asked. I was born with nothing, Elijah, she said softly. And they still tried to take more. Morrison didn't even try to hide. He rode up the canyon like it. Was his God-given road, no worry in his face, only that cold kind of confidence that money breeds. When he stopped at the base of the ridge, he shouted up without even looking, Mr. Cross, I'd hoped you were smarter than this. I stepped forward. Guess I disappointed you. He grinned. You did. You really did." His men spread out, rifles casually slung but ready. Morrison pulled a folded paper from his coat. "This is a writ of seizure. This canyon and everything in it is now property of Morrison Rail and Mineral, including the beast, including the girl." "She ain't property," I growled. He sighed like I was a child who'd spilled something valuable. "Elijah, let me offer you a choice. Walk away. I'll pay fair for your land, double market. You can vanish somewhere nice, clean hands, clean conscience. And Luna?" He shrugged. "I've got a buyer for exotic animals. The girl? Not my concern once she's turned over." Behind me, I heard the soft growl of the panther. Low, dangerous. The sound of fury that's not loud but patient. "You're not getting her," I said. Morrison's grin died. His eyes narrowed. "Then you're a fool," he said. "And fools get buried in canyons just like this." He signaled, and 2 of his men raised their rifles. "You really want to start this?" I asked. "Start?" he said, cold as stone. "Son, it already started when you picked the losing side." I backed away into the rocks, into the place Luna had prepped tripwires, blind corners, pits hidden beneath brush. She'd been ready for this long before I had. "They won't shoot right away," she whispered. "They'll try to take us." "Alive." "Good," I said, loading a round into my rifle. I'm better at shooting things that move. The sun hit high noon dot, and we braced for war. The first shot didn't come from a rifle. It came from the shadows. Morrison's men were halfway up the slope when the panther struck. She moved like lightning, trapped in muscle, a blur of black fur and fury. One man went down screaming before. He even raised his gun, his throat torn open in a blur of motion. Gunfire erupted instantly. Echoes bounced off the canyon walls in a roar of panic. I dropped behind a rock shelf and took aim. One of Morrison's hired guns tried flanking. Right, I dropped him with a single shot to the shoulder. He spun and crumpled, crying out as dust. Kicked up around him, Luna moved like smoke, dashing between boulders, laying traps she'd rigged days before. One man tripped a wire and fell chest first onto sharpened stakes hidden in the brush. Another staggered into a shallow pit and broke, his ankle trying to climb out. Chaos took them faster than bullets could. Morrison stayed back, red-faced and snarling orders none of his men could follow in the chaos. His coat flapped like a flag of rage as he shouted, "Kill the damn cat. Kill her too if you have to." I swung my rifle toward him, but a rockslide, triggered by Luna's traps, forced me to duck. Debris rained down, blocking off part of the slope and separating Morrison from 2 of his men. That gave us the edge. Then I heard Luna scream, not in pain, but fury. She'd drawn a knife and was locked in a close fight with a man twice her size. He had her pinned against the rocks, blade scraping her arm. I raised my rifle, heart pounding. The shot had to be perfect. I squeezed the trigger. The man's head snapped back, and he dropped like a sack of wheat. Luna didn't even look, just picked up her knife and kept moving. The panther roared again, springing from one ledge to another, scattering what remained of the invaders. The beast was surgical. She didn't kill unless she had to. Just terrified, disarmed, and drove the men out like a fire in a chicken coop. In less than 10 minutes, the canyon fell silent again. Gunsmoke drifted through the air like ghostly fog. Groans of the wounded echoed from below. I climbed down to Luna, breath ragged, ears ringing. She had a gash on her forehead and blood on her shirt, but she stood tall. "We ain't done yet," she said, wiping her blade clean on her pants. I looked around. Morrison was gone. "Where horse tracks," she said, pointing to fresh churned dirt, heading back toward the canyon entrance. He ran. I cursed under my breath. He'll come back, she said. With more men, with the law in his pocket. You know it. I nodded. Then we show them the law ain't what it used to be. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since all this began. I never asked for help, she said. I know, I said. I didn't ask for this land to bleed either. We stood in the silence, man and woman, rifle and panther, in a canyon that had seen too many lies, and we waited for justice to ride. By dusk, buzzards circled over the canyon. Wounded men had been tied up and given water, though I can't say I was generous about it. Morrison's hired hands were mercenaries, not lawmen paid to enforce lies with bullets. Luna moved among the injured, her panther always 2 steps behind. She checked wounds, yanked loose a broken arrow shaft from a man's thigh without flinching. Some of them muttered threats, but most stayed quiet. Fear does that when the thing you were hunting ends up sparing you. Then we heard the riders dot it. First, I thought it was another posse. More guns. Another slaughter. But when the first rider crested the canyon lip, I saw the badge. Not Blackwood's. Federal. A dozen mounted men rode in dusty, solemn, and very much not on Morrison's payroll. And behind them, lagging a few paces, was Sheriff Blackwood himself. Hat in hand, face hollow, the lead marshal a gray-bearded man with a Springfield across his back dismounted and nodded to me. Elijah Cross? That's me. You and Miss Hayes sent a telegraph to Judge Mallory 2 days ago? I blinked. We didn't send no wire. Sheriff Blackwood did, the marshal said, casting a look over his shoulder. Blackwood stepped forward, voice barely above a whisper. I lied, Elijah. Lied for years. About the fires. About her folks. I kept my badge, but I lost everything. Else, he looked at Luna. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to fix it, but I reckon this is a start. The marshal held up a folder. Inside were warrants, real ones. Signed, sealed, legitimate. Jacob Morrison is under investigation for land fraud, racketeering, and coercion of public officials. We've got testimony, papers, and 6 folks who finally spoke up. Luna crossed her arms, skeptical. And you expect me to believe the law finally remembered how to read? The marshal smiled sadly. No, miss. But sometimes the law don't matter as much as who decides to enforce it. The canyon felt heavy then, but not the kind of heavy that crushes. The kind that lifts. A younger deputy brought forth a bloodied man on a rope, one of Morrison's own. He was pale, shaking, and full of stories. He talked, the marshal said. Turns out Morrison didn't just take land. He made sure some folks never came back to claim it. Blackwood stepped forward. Again, I got a sworn statement. Morrison bribed me to call Luna's parents squatters. I forged the fire report. I let it all happen. And I'm done. Luna didn't say anything. She just stared at him, eyes hard as canyon stone. Where's Morrison now? The marshal asked. Rode out, I said. South Trail. We'll catch him. You'd better, I said. 'Cause if you don't, I will. The marshal nodded once. Then his men moved in to take inventory. Record statements, tend the wounded. The sun dipped behind the cliffs. The canyon, for the first time in years, felt clean. Luna stood beside. Silent. You think they'll really take him down? She asked. I think they just might. She looked over at the panther, curled on a rock like a sentinel. And if they don't? Then we stay ready, I said. Like we always have. They caught Morrison just outside of Bitter Creek. He'd switched horses twice and shaved his mustache clean. But it didn't matter. A wanted man can't outrun every truth. The marshal wired word back 2 days later. Morrison had been found guilty before the ink dried on his warrant. No bail, no mercy, no deals. I stood on my porch when the wagon rolled by, hauling him in chains. He wouldn't look at me. He stared straight ahead like a man who still believed he was owed something. That was the part that stuck with me, not his fall, but the emptiness in his eyes. Like he'd never once believed anyone would stand up to him. Luna watched from the tree line, Panther at her side. "You could come out," I said. She shook her head. "Not yet." The ranger beside the marshal approached, nodding toward Luna's shadowed figure. "Is that the animal?" "Yes," I said, stepping between them. "That's Luna, and she's done nothing but protect what little she's got left." The ranger scratched his jaw. "That cat's killed men?" "So have I," I replied. "Difference is, she don't miss." He eyed me for a long beat, then nodded. "Not my decision anyway. I'll file the report. No one needs more blood." They rode off. Dust settled, and with it, something else did, too. That night, Luna finally came out of the trees and sat on my porch. We drank coffee in silence. The panther curled up by her boots, finally sleeping like she had nothing left to guard. "You gonna stay?" I asked Dot. She shrugged. "Don't know yet. World's still big. Canyon's still yours. Far as I'm concerned." She looked at May, eyes softer now, tired, wiser. "I'm not a good neighbor, Elijah. Neither am I." We sat like that until the stars came out, warm breeze moving through the mesquite like an old hymn. Eventually, I broke the silence. "What'll you do now?" She leaned back in her chair, stretching her arms. "I got plans, not all of them legal." I chuckled. "Long as they don't involve talking my cattle again, I might be interested." She looked sideways at me. "You offering a partnership?" "I'm offering a place. A name on a deed. Maybe even a fresh start." She didn't answer right away. Just stared out at the land. Same land that nearly swallowed us both whole. "You trust me?" she asked. "No," I said. "But I respect you. And sometimes that's better." Panther purred in her sleep. And for the first time in a long time, the canyon felt quiet. Not from fear. But peace. This is the final part. Thanks for riding with us through another tale from the Old West. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. More adventures are waiting on the trail ahead. See you next time.